Welcome back to another episode of the Know Your Power podcast. I am your host, Juliarene, and today, Kendall is not here. It is just me and our special, super duper special guest, my boyfriend, Zack Blakeney. He has a long list of things that this man does. So let's just cover just a few of them. Zack Blakeney is an emotional intelligence coach for business owners, the CEO of the Conscious Creators Community, host of the Conversations with Creators podcast, trainer for the Journey to Nobody leadership training, co-author of the Know Your Power journal, recovering people pleaser, and his mission is to empower leaders and founders to transform from the inside out. Welcome to the show, baby.
What's up, my sun queen?
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Oh.
I like you.
I like you too.
You have your sexy voice on right now.
Is it?
Yeah.
What's up, baby?
Still gives me butterflies. Well, today, guys, is a very important episode of the Know Your Power podcast because Zack is our first male guest.
Wow.
How does it feel?
What an honor.
It is an honor.
I know.
Take it very seriously.
I mean, there was a time there where you were like, I don't want to have any men on the show.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, all right then.
So the thing is I have nothing whatsoever against men. It was that I wanted to really make sure that I created a safe space for women to just be themselves by listening to this podcast. And I feel like we've done that, you know? And being able to introduce more male guests, we already have 2 more that are on the schedule, I think is really going to help women realize that there can be very smart, handsome, emotionally intelligent, not toxic masculine men in the world. And I so happen to find myself one.
Yeah, I think it's great because our topic for today is going to get into the masculinity. And you're like, it's not that I have anything against men, right? So there is this energy that's permeating through our society collectively between men and women. And certainly it's been something that has transpired over time and generations, really. And seeing the divine feminine or the feminine energy start to come forward as it is downpouring throughout our collective. And men either starting to integrate this energy or adamantly rejecting this energy.
Very passionately as well.
Very passionately. It's been interesting to watch, especially for myself since, I work with men and women, but the majority of it is men. And a lot of what I work with them on is the integration of this energy. So just to make a distinction as we're moving into this, we have masculine and feminine, and these are energies. Now, the masculine energy is more closely related to the male, and the feminine energy is more closely related to the female. But each male and female has both of these energies inside of them. And I'm excited to talk about that with you today and really about what it means to be a divine masculine presence as a man for women.
Well, before we get into that, because that's definitely going to be our number one topic for today and why people are listening, I think it would benefit people to go back a little bit because you weren't always like that. You actually kind of started your journey being a little bit more hyper-masculine because maybe you were hiding a little bit about yourself. Maybe there's a little guilt, maybe a little shame attached to that. So in brief, because I know people kind of know you already, let people know your story so we can put together the puzzles.
Yeah, so first off, I want to say that there actually is no toxic masculinity. There is just unresolved trauma that creates misaligned behavior. Now, society, our collective society, is a hyper-masculine society. And the masculine is the do, constantly going. So men and women, again, are subjugated to this possibility that they can have this masculine energy. For me, of course, I can use that as a grounding to say, yeah, I grew up in a society that's hyper-masculine. But also, men take that and say, okay, there's some traits of a quote-unquote strong man. And the traits are, be very stoic, don't show emotions are weak. Vulnerability is something that you don't do at all because, again, that's a sign of weakness. And this idea of being a man had to do with more about your physical strength, your domination over others, competition, So this is what I was raised into, and not necessarily by my parents, because I don't actually consider my father to be a hyper masculine man, or my mother to be that, or a hyper masculine woman. Like, I had a very great upbringing, like upper middle class white American, had access to all the things that I would need, so to speak, or maybe not need, want, to be able to live a quote unquote privileged life. Mm-hmm. Right. So, with that, I was privileged enough to have the updated computers and the updated broadband internet and everything else. So for me as a 14-year-old boy, exploring my sexuality and what it meant to be attracted to women and starting to see them from a stance of, not you, you're gross, but hey, what's up? So that transition point, led me into the internet. And at that time, the transition from dial-up AOL internet to broadband internet brought in a lot of high-speed videos that were pornography videos. Mm-hmm. And this is where I started my first journey, so to speak, into pornography addiction as a 14-year-old boy, innocently looking at something. And when I say innocently, I didn't know what was going to transpire from this thing. Mm-hmm. I'm 14. Like, my level of self-awareness is 0. So I started watching this, and obviously there is a strong emotional cycle of pornography, which ultimately is just like an emotional cycle of sex. There's similarities and differences. The similarity is the orgasm. So this is something that feels really good. So I started to map, so to speak, my ability to orgasm to pornography. And over time, that became a safe thing for me to do. Mm-hmm. And I would do it repetitively over and over and over again. So this thing that is a habit becomes an addiction. And the way that I distinguish a habit and an addiction, because they're really the same thing, it's a repetitive behavior that you do over time, is that an addiction has a destructive quality to you internally, and with that being said, the people around you, where a habit has a positive effect to you. Right? So there's no destructive effect to this. But again, just when you're looking at it, it's the same thing. It's a behavior you do over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So it became an addiction when I started to become very socially anxious around women, and just in general. I had plenty of opportunities to have sex with a woman. Matter of fact, the first opportunity I had to have sex with a woman, I was 16. I was at a party. We were drinking. I got put into a room with her, and I could not perform. I was really hyper anxious. So like 16 and going through these things that were happening to me. And I remember actually when I couldn't perform, then my mind started to trace to the pornographic images to try and achieve an erection while I was with this girl. Mm-hmm. It didn't work. So there's a lot of different factors I can look at that. I was drunk, you know what I mean? I was at a party. Literally, we were in a room that was the master bedroom, and then everybody's partying in the living room that's right outside of it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that I can say contributed to it, but how my mind related it was that I failed. Mm-hmm. I had this opportunity, and I failed. So that stuck with me. So then that kind of started to permeate with relationships with women where I would date them, and they were sexually active, and I would get to a point where they'd want to be sexually active with me, but I started building up this fear. So fast forward, I want to give you guys kind of the origin, because now you could say by the time I was 30, I had watched pornography tens of thousands of times, you know what I mean, and done this thing. And the adverse long-term effects to that was porn-induced erectile dysfunction, was not being able to connect emotionally with myself. The guilt, the shame, the regret that I held inside of me, I just kind of like pushed it down and acted like it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. But as I acted like it didn't exist, it expanded inside of my body to the point where I could no longer ignore it, no matter how much I wanted to. And how unhappy I was with myself not only was inside of the porn addiction, but then it turned into drug addiction. And at the time I was married, so then that also ended in a divorce. And that was the moment that I had my first, I would say, awakening. Mm-hmm.
And what age were you at here?
30.
Okay.
Yeah. So after 16 years of porn addiction, 2 years of drug addiction towards the tail end of those 16 years, and a divorce, I had this awakening. And the awakening came through meditation. So about 3 months prior to my ex-wife leaving me, I had been open to something called transcendental meditation. And I heard about it on a podcast and everything else. And I was like, you know what? I'll start doing this. And I had some really profound experiences inside of it because it was the first time that I was able to dissolve all the mental chatter and the rhetoric around me and be still and like listen. Mm-hmm. And the first time I meditated was during a time that I had absolutely nothing to be happy about or joyful about. And it was during Thanksgiving, and I was supposed to go to Thanksgiving with my ex-wife to her family, but she left me alone, and I figured that she was going to leave me. So I was just highly anxious, highly stressed. And my intuition said, hey, maybe you should try this thing. So I meditated at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I remember it. It was in Texas, beautiful fall day. And after I got done meditating, there was this voice that spoke to me in the meditation and said, everything's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. So then I go outside with my dog Reese, and I start throwing the ball with him, playing fetch. And as I'm looking around, like the colors are brighter. I can feel the wind on my skin. I can feel the sun on my face, and I'm just hyper present. And I let out this joyful, childlike laugh during a time which, again, I had nothing to be joyful about.
Yeah, I got nothing to laugh about.
So over time, meditating started to kind of like awaken this inner part of me. And right after my ex-wife left me, I was in victim for a long time with that while we were in the relationship. And I stayed in victim for about 30 days afterwards. And when I say victim, I mean like it was the core way that I was looking at things. Mm-hmm. And then I was in this meditation again, and voice spoke to me, source, higher self, me, who knows at this point, says, what would happen if you start taking 100% responsibility for your life and your experiences? And something just switched inside of me where I started to see all the things that I had done and all the ways that I had blamed others and projected it out and created the chaos that created. And I could clearly see how I was the one that created it. Mm. And then through that, it led me down this desire to want to know what happened to me during addiction and why I was so far away from who I really was. Mm-hmm. I was questioning whether I was a good person at this time. I was told myself I was a shitty person and a shitty man, and I didn't deserve anything. So that led me down going into the science route. I started looking into subconscious free mapping, neurochemistry, epigenetics. Understanding all of these things truly gave me some solace to know that, like, okay, wait a second, this is something that can be transformed. I can shift this. Mm-hmm. But then there was still something missing, and I call this like a substantial foundation. Like, I knew all these things in the science realm, but I still felt like I could fall back into this at any point. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like, here's this information, and all of this is great, and also, if I fail, there's nothing to catch me. So I was like, what is this substantial foundation? Well, I was raised Catholic and had a relationship with God, I guess you can say, and the relationship that I was told that I was supposed to have with God. And it never felt substantial. And then this time period when I was about 32 or so really started to, again, this is 2 years of doing all this self-awareness work with my mind and starting to realize that, like, why am I here? What's the point? Like, what's the point of all this? What's the point of doing all this work? And that question kind of led me into what I know to be true now, which is, consciousness is what I call it, but we can call it spirituality. And it is a deep connection that I have with God in a way of being able to see myself as such. Not that I am God, the God that created this entire universe, but that I am God, a portion of God that is playing a human being on this planet. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing that came forward was I once thought myself separate from this entity, God, and now I see myself as being unified with it. And that is what created this substantial foundation of saying, okay, there is purpose to my life. There is a reason why I'm here. Mm-hmm. This isn't by accident. Like, I have gone through the things that I've gone through for a purpose. And that purpose bubbled up in the sense of saying, I want to start sharing my story. I want to start sharing what happened to me, because there's so many men that struggle with pornography. I mean, statistics show that 1 in 3 men in the entire planet struggle with this. So you're talking about, maybe 1 to 2 billion men. And there's plenty of women that struggle with this as well. But I was like, okay, let me start there and really start sharing my story. And then marry that with my natural intuitive gift, which was to recognize patterns. I could always recognize patterns in other people. Like I was a great advice giver, whether it was solicited or unsolicited. I was really good at giving advice because I could see their pattern, but I could never see myself. Once I saw my own pattern and then I started to realize that what is most personal is most universal, then other people have the same pattern. So that gave me the courage to speak about this. And as that started to transpire, then all of these things of my past experiences, what I learned through science, what started to be revealed to me through consciousness and my intuitive gifts came together to form what I could say is the most authentic version of who I am. Mm-hmm. And then that desire to serve is what pushed that into, how I was serving clients. Because, I was your coach for a while with bodybuilding. So I started to integrate all of this knowledge, so to speak, and teachings into bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. But I felt a bigger calling, and I'm not going to say bodybuilding. I know you do bodybuilding. It's not that it's, I don't want to say bigger. I felt a different calling to go towards leaders and entrepreneurs because I know that if I can be a guide to them in their own transformation, that it creates the ripple effect of the people they're leading and the business that they're creating, the creative juices inside of them that are ultimately going to be the solutions that help transform our world. Mm-hmm. So that was the biggest motivator for me to move into where I am now, to working with leaders and founders.
Cool. Okay. Ooh, there's a lot. There's a lot. I'm over here making mental notes. I'm like, remind me to say this, to talk about this. So going back, the thing that really stuck out to me the most was the moment when you actually listened to your intuition to go and meditate. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was the first experience that you had that brought you to the man that you are today. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of listeners can benefit from maybe giving some advice or some tips on how to listen to your intuition, because everyone's saying like, listen to your intuition, listen. They're like, but like how? Because mm-hmm. we quiet our voices so much that sometimes it becomes really difficult to hear us. So in that moment, how did you know it was your intuition, and how would you help other people recognize theirs?
So your intuition is in flow with the universe, in flow with your purpose. Ultimately, your intuition is the feeling of your soul. So when you feel a lot of resistance in your life, like when you are trying to do something and it feels like you are just pushing a boulder uphill and like no matter what you do, you can't seem to get to the top, mm-hmm. you're most likely going against what you are what your intuition is telling you to do.
Yeah.
Your intuition is pulling you somewhere else. And many times we don't go that direction because we are afraid of that direction, because whatever we've created up to that point is safe and comfortable. But again, it's not fulfilling. So your intuition is all about fulfillment. And it's driving you to do things or trying to guide you to do things. I call it an inner guidance system to truly live a purposeful and fulfilled life. Mm-hmm. But again, there's that resistance of the fear of the what if, you know what I mean? Like, well, if I go this route, like what if this and what if that and everything else? It's this state of mystery that we put ourselves in, a state in which we don't know, but we need to know. Mm-hmm. But trick's on you, because the only thing that is certain in life is uncertainty. So it's really, that's the best way I can describe it, is that it is the thing that when you think about a thought and it feels purposeful and right, that is coming from your intuition. That is coming from your spirit. Mm-hmm. And then when you think about all the things that are causing you distress, suffering, guilt, shame, regret, fear, that is coming from your egoic mind. And once we can transcend this egoic mind, then what I found is that my intuition, which started with a feeling, started to have a voice and started to be able to speak.
It's almost like what I have noticed is that when you are really trying to listen to your intuition, it's almost like your intuition starts as a whisper. So it's like the example of you meditating, for example. When I imagine, because I'm very visual, I'm imagining you're outside with Reese, and it's almost like a whisper that comes as like a little light breeze of wind. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's why people struggle with hearing it, because it's so quiet and so subtle, versus the opposite, which is all of the fear, the self-doubt and the guilt and the shame. They're so loud and they compound in your brain, and they're just like, no, no, no. So I don't know if you feel like yours is the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the intuition has a sound, mm-hmm. and it's or
Oh, yeah.
That's really how it kind of starts. And you can think about this in a way like how I do it is like I like to go to networking events. And well, I'll be looking at different networking events that are happening. And then I go to the page and then I say, okay, I'm going to choose this one. And after I say I'm going to choose it, I listen to my body. And it's not just the it's also a feeling of lightness is the and then a feeling of heaviness in your gut is the
Yeah.
You know, so like that's kind of like where it starts at. Yeah. And that's what I kind of tune into is like, okay. And then in this example, if I'm going to go to the event, I just go to the event without expectation. I'm like, I don't know, intuition is telling me I'm going to find something here, so let's go, you know. And then that's kind of like that trust and surrender into your intuition. And again, what I know because I know it to be true, it's easier for me to surrender into it. But many people, again, have that duality of the ego and the fear and then the inner guidance system and the soul, and they don't know which one is true. So it's kind of hard to choose because you're just wrapped up in the conflict of your mind.
Yeah. And guys, he really does this so often. And sometimes I just forget about how much like work he does and how much he listens to himself because I'm just so used to it by now. But we did go to a networking event last Tuesday, and he does this thing where he'll just tell me, I know I was there for support. And he goes, I'm gonna do a little loop and see if, what was the word you said? You didn't say intuition, but you just said, see if anybody like calls out to me or speaks to me. And that's really what he's doing is he's walking around and just feeling, or feeling, like, okay, I see this guy, he's giving me, vibes. So I'm gonna go up and talk to him. And that's how he goes about almost every single thing that he does in his life. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's led me down probably a longer path to scaling like my business in the way that I want to scale it. I mean, again, you've been along for the ride, you know, going from bodybuilding coach to, you know, how you introduced me in the beginning here, emotional intelligence, which is, you know, the business way of saying consciousness. They are different and the same. And continuing to kind of surrender to this internal world of what this internal world is telling me, my spirit, my intuition, my inner guidance system is telling me. And while doing that, realizing the more I surrender into it, the more I come back into my reality, and I'm like, oh, this isn't quite right. Yeah. This isn't quite right. This is close. This isn't quite right. And I feel like this year is the year that it's right. Like, I'm like, okay, here we are. And now that I've gotten to this point after multiple brand names and multiple targeting and multiple ways of doing content and everything else, it's like I finally feel like my substantial foundation is my life. Yeah. Instead of something I have to fall back on it, I feel substantial every single day.
So another part of your story that really stuck out to me was the kind of the victim loop that you were in for a while, because you were saying that the moment that you just questioned, maybe there's something different. You literally just said to yourself, what if I took 100% responsibility for things that happened? Was it super easy to accept the answer that you got? Or was there some sort of like rejection? Because I feel like whenever we do try to take responsibility from things that we're feeling guilt, shame, and what we're blaming the world for, you know, you always hear that like, everything happens to me, the world's against me. Yeah. Was there a part of you that was like clinging to the victim when you were going through that moment?
Yeah, and it wasn't a complete 100% shift from victim to responsibility. Yeah. It was just the initial moment. And it was actually very easy to accept because what else was I going to do at that point? Nothing else was working. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, yeah, this is something new, so I can entertain it. But it felt very heavy. Like the energy of it felt very heavy. And it was like all the emotions that I had been blocking from experiencing kind of just bubbled up. And for, I would say the next 3 or 4 months, because I ended up living alone, which was also one big fear I had, was fear of being alone. And I'm dealing with being alone. I'm dealing with still these tracing thoughts of victim, of blame, but also trying to reorient myself back to responsibility and doing all these things. And the best way I can describe it is that I felt heavy, and I felt all the the suffering that I had experienced, because just because I was blocking those emotions didn't mean I was suffering. I tell a lot of people, I'll be like, you don't really know what good is until you do the inner work to heal. And then you realize that what you thought was good was suffering. Mm. And this is actually good. This is actually what it means to actually feel good about yourself. Mm. So yeah, it was really heavy in the beginning, but then after doing the inner work and really starting to dissolve all these loops and, you know, finding the truth inside of myself, now it's actually a very light way of being. Like, I like to say that responsibility equals resolve. And there's a definition for resolve, but my definition for resolve is that you already know the answer to the question you're asking, which is I'm responsible. And just by answering that question so quickly, I can reorient myself to the feeling. I'm not immune to, you know, why is this happening to me? I'm not immune to that question showing up in my head, but I know the answer. Why does this happen to me? I'm responsible. Okay. If I'm responsible, what do I do from this point? Mm-hmm. So it was a difficult time, but also it was the most rewarding time of my life.
Yeah. And I think that this shift right here is so important to talk about, because we have two completely different versions of yourself. The same body, human, spirit, whatever you want to call it, but like two different versions of yourself. We have the let's say 29 to 30-year-old who's been addicted to porn for over 16 years, going through a divorce, you know, wanting to completely change his career, living alone. All of these are happening relatively at the same time. And this is a perfect example of maybe why people go away from doing that inner work, because it is too hard. It is too deep. You probably felt a lot of loneliness, sadness, you know, reflection, guilt, shame, all these things all at one time. And I'm curious to know what kept you going during this time instead of just completely turning back. Because if we're thinking about it, you were so much closer to just turning around and staying there. Mm-hmm. What made you turn the other way and look towards the light and continue to go?
When I was really young, and for some reason, my mind is saying 5 years old, so I'm going to go ahead and say that was the time. I had this feeling that I was meant for greatness, and I didn't know what that meant at the time. I was a great baseball player, so like I thought that meant I was going to be a professional baseball player, and obviously that didn't work out. But it was just this intuitive knowing that was the case. Mm-hmm. And no matter what was happening, I had this drive from this feeling that I was meant for greatness. And, you know, greatness to me has changed. The definition has changed over time. But it's always been centered around service and being able to serve people at I want to use the word more effective way. So I don't want to say, like, I was thinking higher, but more effective way. And that's like kind of driven my own understanding of myself, but then also how to guide people in a way that empowers them, guide people in a way that they increase their own self-belief, that they dissolve the fear, that they create really powerfully. And that to me fills me up the most, is that I've been able to put myself into a position at this point where I truly, truly know that I'm the creator of my experience. And knowing that, I want to be able to help others come to that knowing. But I can't tell them that they're that way. I have to guide them to the truth that's inside of them. Mm-hmm. So to me, like you're talking about greatness, like to me, it's like serving at a very high level of giving without expecting anything in return, and also truly being there for them to see their greatness come up within inside of them. You know, I call it their genius that's inside of them. So that's really been the driving force, I guess you can say, is just, again, at a very young age, knowing that I was meant to be here for something that was bigger than me.
Yeah. Do you think you tapped into that during that time?
Yeah, because no matter how many times I actually quit in my life, because I quit on a lot of things. Like, you know, when I hurt my arm in college for baseball, I went ahead and just started drinking and eating late night Taco Bell and smoking weed and all this other stuff, and essentially gave up. I could have went and rehabbed and everything else. I didn't. I just gave up. Whenever I got promoted into a general manager position while I was in corporate. I gave up. I considered the end of my marriage giving up, so I kept seeing myself, quote unquote, quitting. And I realized during that time that I wasn't quitting, that I was just transitioning. And this was a season of my life. And then now this is a new season of my life. Mm-hmm. But each time that something was let go, it made room for a new opportunity to come forward. Yeah. And the new opportunity has always been more closely aligned to why I'm here and what I'm called to do.
Yeah. So what would you say to anybody that might be listening to this and they're in that stuck place where they are so much closer to just reverting back to this person that's causing them so much pain, or they can just turn and look to the light? What advice would you give them, like practical advice for them to just start?
I would just say that it's worth it. And words can't put it together really, like the depth, because these are words and it's a feeling. Yeah. But do the work as quickly as you can and find a guide that you trust that can help you do that, because the dreams that you have inside of you can be created in your life, can be manifested in your life. It is possible. Not only is it possible, it is why you're here. Yeah. No matter how crazy your brain wants to say it sounds, no matter how crazy people around you tell you are, no matter how much they doubt you or anything else, the secret to living a fulfilled life is following your dreams. And the longer you wait to do that, the more unlikely it becomes that you will. Yeah. So many people want to put aside the inner work for, money at their job. They want to put aside the inner work to try and uphold a relationship that will never maintain. They want to just put things aside, and they say, I'll get to it. And while they say, I get to it, more destruction happens in their life.
And the older they get.
Yeah, it's more difficult to transition into really following that path that has been laid out for you, so to speak, divinely. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. It's so funny because people will spend money on things that cause them pain. They'll spend $2,000 on a television that helps them numb out. Yeah. You'll spend thousands of dollars on OnlyFans and, porn sites, even though it's free. Like I never spent any money on porn sites. It's like, this is all free. Like, I don't know.
Now we have fancy porn.
Yeah, I think you guys don't spend money on porn. It's free. Like, you can find plenty. But all this money here, they'll spend the money that causes them suffering, but they won't spend the money that heals their suffering. Yeah. So the reason why I talk about all this is one of the biggest deterrents is this idea of where I put my money and the return that I get on it, the return on investment. Yeah. And too many people are putting money into it where the return on investment is a negative result for you. So when I'm looking at this from this stance, I would tell you that when you choose to become self-aware and move into self-mastery, you become a master of your reality. You become a master of your life. You become the creator of your life. And when you know that you're the creator of your life, infinite possibilities open up for you. And this dream that you thought at one point could never happen because either you're not good enough or you're doubting yourself and the unworthiness and everything else also starts to dissolve. And then the possibility of this being true starts to drive you towards manifesting it. Yeah. Because the only way it doesn't occur is if you choose to start going towards your dreams, the only way it doesn't occur is if you quit.
Or if you don't try at all.
Yes. And for me, the most difficult part about all this, and like I said, I feel like it's might be taking me a little bit longer to start scaling my business to the area that I want it to be, is because I've been so focused on finding what is the most truest thing inside of me that I can bring forward. Yeah. And it's been a journey, but knowing that I'm here now and knowing that this is it, I know that the vision I see for my life is going to occur without a shadow of a doubt, as if I have seen the future and knew it was going to happen. And then I'm back here and I'm creating this thing to happen. I know it. Mm-hmm. And you only get to that sense of knowing by doing the inner work.
Yeah. Wow. Mic drop. So, oh man, I was getting a little mesmerized, but because he's just so cute and his words. But oh man, what was it? It was so good. Something along the lines of that. Shoot, maybe it'll come up later.
Maybe.
So, okay, random transition that we're going into. So, you talked about how when you finally had the courage to kind of come out and be open and vulnerable about your pornography addiction. So this is kind of tying into, what we started talking about, which was the masculine and the feminine. Mm-hmm. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really think this was kind of the start and the spark of you really tapping into your feminine. Because I was telling Zach this the other day, and although I love that he's a bearded, tattooed, like hippie bun man, the reason that I fell in love with him was because of his feminine energy. It was like weird to me. I was like, I've never seen a guy like this before. And I'm a hyper masculine woman who's learning to be more feminine still to this day. So he not only scared me, but I kind of like ran away from it. But it was the reason that I fell in love with him so much and that we've been able to have this relationship together. So I want you to speak to that moment when you decided to tap into your feminine energy, and what response did you get from maybe your family and the public about opening up in that way?
Mixed reviews. I had some that, again, were really masculine males that, I had a whole group of people that I was hanging out with that I don't hang out with anymore or associate with. And mainly because when I started to become vulnerable, they started to use my vulnerability as a way to tease me.
And you know what's crazy? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I made a TikTok post and I shared it with you, and it was maybe a year ago. And I was like, you know what the most attractive quality for a man is? And then I waited a second, was like vulnerability. And I thought it was going to be like 100% people going, yeah. But a lot of the men who commented said, every time I've tried to do this, the response I have gotten has caused me to retreat back into myself. And that just utterly broke my heart.
Yeah, well, there's a lot I could say around that, but let's keep on inside of this. So there was that response where I was teased, I was made fun of. There were stories that were permeating around me that I didn't know what the content was, but I knew they were negative and they were about me. And then on the other side of it, I had people that were very respectful of that and started to honor me for my vulnerability, men and women, both. And it was during that time, honestly, I met my best friend, Sonny, and he was one of those people, that was willing to listen to me and saw me as still being a powerful man, even though I was going through a very tough time in my life.
Do you think that was the first man that you met that you felt that comfortable with?
Yeah, and that was an instant thing. Yeah. We instantly became best friends after one session.
Did we just become best friends?
Yeah. Yep. So it was like, if I had a statement to those men that you were talking about, I would say, once you do that, you also have to realize that the people around you are going to see you as being fake, because you have been fake. You have been fake the entire time.
Wow.
So if you try and show up differently in a group that you've been a certain way with your personality, and now these things are coming out, well, now they're going to see you as being fake because you were being fake.
Because you weren't actually being true to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then,
that's why people struggle with you changing, your parents, your friends, whatever it might be, because you're right. I've never thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. You're being fake because you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah. So once I became true to myself, then I started to attract the type of people that would accept my truth, would accept who I was. And that's how I really found my soul family through this process. So those men that are saying that they get rejected, and sometimes women reject them. My ex-wife wasn't great with my vulnerability, but also she had so much hurt and pain for me lying about it for such a long time. Like, it was understandable. But typically when you start becoming vulnerable, you also have to be ready for a complete life transformation. Yeah. As in, you're transforming, the type of people you hang around is going to transform, what you do with your life, your habits, like everything is going to transform. And that transition point of transformation is, again, really painful, because you have to learn how to let go of the things and the people that no longer serve you or align with who you are, and then be patient enough to attract, and even more so, have the courage to go out and meet new people, to attract these people into your life. And then once you move to that transition point, then you start to find, again, your soul family, the people that accept you and love you for who you are, that honor you for being vulnerable. I mean, there's so many people out there that are like that.
Yeah.
You know? So it's a difficult time. But when I look at, so I guess moving into like this masculine and feminine energy and what we were talking about at the beginning, you know, a lot of women have a lot of resentment towards men in general.
Yeah.
Because of these men showing up hypermasculine in a way that was passed down by society.
Yeah.
But to me, the highest form of masculine energy is one, integrity. Yeah. So let me be my word to what I'm committed to. Accountability to that. And then not accepting the reasons and the excuses and the circumstances that prevent me from being my word. So to me, that's a really high form of masculine energy. Now, that isn't something that most men that are saying they're being masculine are doing.
Wow. What are they doing?
Well, they're not in integrity, for one. One of the most frustrating things for women towards their boyfriends or their partners is that they don't keep their word. They say they're going to do something and then they don't do it. We've had that experience in our relationship, you know, prior to this, and like chores and things like that. I think I've gotten much better at keeping my word when I say I'm going to do something, right? So then it creates you to feel safe that you can count on me. So the definition for integrity that I like is it's a state of being whole and undivided. And you can think about this as the integrity of a bridge. Like if I'm going to drive across a bridge, I want to know that the bridge is going to hold my car and not collapse in on me. So that's what happens when somebody is in integrity. Baby, you can lean on me and I'm not going to fall, right? And that's what creates a safe feeling with a man, a masculine presence inside of a man. But the other thing that creates a safe feeling, which is to me the highest form of the feminine energy, is a word called grace. Not forgiveness, grace. And the difference between forgiveness and grace is that forgiveness, typically you need to forgive a specific instance, where grace is you're already forgiven.
Yeah.
So grace then allows for the room and the space to make mistakes, right? You can make mistakes, and I'm not going to leave you for the mistake. Grace allows me to say, dang, look at my life. Look at the mistakes I've made in my life, and I'm going to sit here and judge this person for the mistake that they just made. How hypocritical is that? So with that, if I can, or if a man is listening or women are listening right now and they're like, oh, maybe I can do this inside of a man. That's what I know creates a safe space for a woman to be with a man, is they're integrous and also they're graceful. Yeah. And when you have those two things, you can grow together easily because you're not afraid to make mistakes. Because a lot of times, again, people are afraid to make mistakes because the fear is that if I make this mistake, my partner's going to leave me. So then they're not vulnerable about their mistake. Yeah. But then they hold that in, and then resentment starts to bubble, and all these different things start to bubble, and then the dissonance in the relationship transpires because of that, because you have not created a safe environment to be vulnerable and open about these things, because vulnerability and transparency are the key to growth. Yes. How can you grow from something if you're not accepting that you have this thing that you need to grow from? Well, you don't. You just hold on to it. So that's where this has gotten really kind of convoluted, and how men and women have created this narrative towards each other because of the men who are not creating a safe space, who are not being accountable, who do not keep their word, which creates the women to feel a certain way. And typically that man will blame the women for them not keeping their word because they're going to be in victim. And then the woman on the other side, typically, again, is holding a lot of masculine energy. They're afraid to express vulnerability because the man hasn't created a safe space to express the vulnerability, so they lean more on the masculine. And then if you have two people that are hypermasculine and it's a man and a woman, sexual attraction pretty much goes out the window because sexuality is a feminine energy. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to like feel that sexual arousal and attraction together because neither one of you are expressing the source of sexual energy, which is the feminine energy.
Wow. That was very good. That was a really good, clear way of describing that. So what I want to do is kind of go in the route of, maybe not tips is the word, I would say maybe some practices that women can do. Let's start with women, that women can do to help a man feel safe so that he can be a little bit more in his feminine?
Yeah, so there's and this will be for men and women, but there's a communication style that we use inside of our business that I use with my clients, and I also teach them. And it's called express and reflect. And me and Julie have done this plenty. The reason why I'm going to this tool is that typically people do not want to speak or be vulnerable because they're afraid of what is the effect of the vulnerability.
Yeah.
So in that same example where I said, you might be afraid to make a mistake because you're afraid that it's going to hurt your partner, and that hurt from the partner is going to have you break up, right? So then you don't become vulnerable about it. Well, if you know what the fear is to why you're not being vulnerable, then you can speak to the fear first to lessen the vulnerability, or lessen the, the resistance to being vulnerable.
How would this look like?
Okay. So you've made a mistake, right? And you want to tell your partner about it. You express your fear. You say, hey, I've done something and I'm afraid it's going to hurt you. And I'm afraid that you're going to leave me, and I haven't wanted to talk to you about it because of these things. Just by expressing that fear first to your partner then has the opportunity to say, well, you can tell me and I'm not going to leave you, right? Or you can tell me and I want to be able to tell you that, like, hey, like, I've made mistakes. Like, you're giving your partner an opportunity to know what's been holding you back from being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's still up to your partner to respond in a way, and in a way that actually is going to create that to happen. But it's always speaking to the fear first, and then set an intention for what you're about to say.
Yeah.
So then you say, okay, so that was my fear, and this is my intention. My intention is to tell you this because I have felt blocked from you. Mm-hmm. And I really want to be connected with you on a deeper level. And I know that this is blocking me. So that's why I want to tell you. So now you've told them your fear. And now with the intention, you're lessening their fear by saying, what I'm about to give to you in communication is not for me to leave you. It's because I want to have a deeper relationship with you. Mm-hmm. So now you're dissolving the resistance from accepting the vulnerability from the person you're talking to, just by being courageous enough to express your fear and knowing what is the intended outcome from the conversation, so that the other person is aligned with that intended outcome and sees it differently, no matter how much it might have hurt the person. Mm-hmm. Now, there are levels, right? Like, I know that if I cheated on Julia, like we've already talked about, like that's pretty much the end of the relationship, right? So there are levels to this. But typically in a relationship in which there is just petty arguments and fights and, miscommunication and misunderstandings and everything can be easily dissolved with this style of communication.
Yeah. And like, I just want to pull an example from Zack and I's personal life that we use this practice. So I am you guys know me, OCD or just anal about things. Zack is a little bit more go with the flow, he doesn't that's not the top priority, but it was difficult at the beginning of our relationships to find a balance between the two. And the way that I approached it was by not approaching it. I would just stew and let it, ruminate and let it just build and bubble up. And he had no idea that I was so upset about something because I didn't express it. This is where my masculine energy comes in. I'm like, press it down, be a man, And I was like, hey, this isn't working for me. So I even believe when I first told him about it, I barely looked at him. I was looking to the ground. I was like, I have to tell you this thing, and I'm just worried that blah, blah, blah. So we did this, and the intention behind me telling him that him not helping around the house was upsetting me. My intention was so that we can become closer and that he can understand the importance of him being in integrity with the things he says he's going to do when he says he's going to do them. And by that, it was it was like a light bulb in his head, and it was actually so much easier than I made it out to be in my head. And now we have a really good balance of doing these things at home.
Yeah.
It took a long time, though.
It took a long time, but again, through that, we started to there were some things that I realized why I wasn't feeling so called to help was because I didn't make as much of the messes.
Yeah. So you guys know on my YouTube channel, like I make recipes, I do all this. So like Zack is a one plate, one spoon all day kind of guy. So there'd be piles of dishes and it would be like his dish day. And it was so crazy because I remember the moment was there's a pile of dishes and I had just finished doing a YouTube video and I looked at them, I went, oh crap. These are all mine, and it's Zack's dish days. And evil me was like, okay, maybe if I don't see anything, then he'll do them anyways. And he comes over and he goes, what the heck? And then I started dying laughing, and I was like, I knew I wasn't going to get away with it. So, we made adjustments to our rules.
And that was something that transpired during our time away from each other last year was I realized I was like, I do my clothes once a week, and I do my dishes once a week. On a Friday. It was every Friday.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so easy living myself and being clean. Why is this difficult with Julia?
Because Julia does it every day.
And then Julia's got like 4 loads of clothes throughout her week and like
I change clothes a lot
everywhere. So we created a new agreement which basically said that I'll do my own laundry and I'll do my own dishes and you do your own thing, and it's been really good since then. Yeah,
and it's like society has these roles that women think that they need to be put in. And look, I'm very like independent. No one tell me what to do. But I love doing things for my man. I love making him breakfast. I like doing his laundry and folding his little socks and little underwears. I love doing those things for him because that's how I show love to other people. But I did find that I was like getting resentful because in my head, the love I was expressing wasn't getting returned. And later did I find out that Zack doesn't even find love through presents and gifts and acts of service. He just wants quality time. Like he just wants to hang with me. And I'm like, oh, but that seems so difficult. Because I was like, but if you're not giving and serving and like laying down your life for someone, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm. And to me, the greatest service you can give me is your presence.
I know. Seems so difficult, right? Well, the last topic that I want to talk about is your journey to nobody training. Mm-hmm. So you've been working with your team for quite a while now, maybe not on the journey to nobody specifically, but y'all been working together for a while now. So as you guys know, Zack, me, Liv, who's been on the podcast, we've all been through this 3-day training, and it was the most impactful thing that I have ever been through. And I want you to tell the audience about it and the purpose behind it and your mission with where you want to take it.
Yeah, so I would tell you the purpose behind it is healing and self-discovery. And when I say self-discovery, you're discovering your divine self, your infinitely powerful self, while also becoming very aware of how your egoic mind is limiting you in different ways. And what we like to say is that it collapses time on personal development, years of personal development, and years, possibly decades of healing in just 3 days.
Real quick, imagine if you went to this training at that moment when you were going through all that crap.
Oh, it would have catapulted me forward.
Yeah.
In a way that is unfathomable to really think about at this point, but I get to experience seeing it with the attendees that come through the training and the transformation that happens in 3 days. And not only that, but the effect of after the training and seeing these miracles that are happening post-training for people. Anywhere from new opportunities coming forward to doubling and tripling their revenue, to new moments of awareness of old things that were causing them pain where they choose something differently. It's a really incredible experience that we've put together, and it's so effective. It's so effective because we've just designed a container for you to show up in and to learn about yourself through these processes or experiences that we've designed that are gentle but highly effective. So we like to say that we leave the motivational speakers at home. If anybody's been here before, they might have or been to different seminars or anything before. They go to these seminars, there's a speaker on stage. They tell you their inspiring and motivational story. They give you a couple of tips. You write a few things down or don't, and then you go home and you feel really inspired, but then nothing shifts.
Yeah, it like fades away.
Because you're being told something. And when you're being told something, it's not empowering. You're just listening, and then, whether you resonate or don't resonate, it doesn't matter. With this, there is no motivational speakers. There's hardly any quote unquote teaching of content. It is literally just experiences every single day for the 3 days that you show up in, and then you get to learn about yourself through the experience. And what we say is that knowledge only comes through experience.
Yeah.
The way I like to describe this is that our mind will trick us to think we know something without experiencing it. And here's how that's not true. I could sit in this chair right now and I could read every single business building book, every single personal development book, every single consciousness book, whatever on the planet. It could take me 60 years. I could die in this chair. I would think I knew everything, but I did nothing except for sit in this chair.
Oh, wow.
So that's how this is true, is that you only learn through experience. So if you have really profound experiences in a short amount of time that teach you something about yourself, then you learn faster about yourself, which is this collapsing time. And again, the amount of healing that happens. I mean, we've had people come through it with years of porn addiction that go through the 3 days and never touch porn again.
Yeah.
We have had people that have had, relationship trauma, and some of the deepest things. I mean, again, I'm not going to reveal everything inside of this because we keep a safe environment inside of there. But just some of the most heartbreaking stories that we have heard and come out of it completely healed and seeing it in a different way and so much lighter and so much freer. So some of the responses we get, some of the reflections we get from the experiences, they'll say, well, I never felt like I knew how to live until now. I never knew what it truly meant to live.
Yeah. There's also been people that came in, correct me if I'm wrong, but wanting to take their life and then left.
Yes.
And it saved their life.
Yes. And we've had people of all ages. We've had anywhere between at one point we had an 18-year-old in the room and a 65-year-old in the same room. Like, it does not matter where you are. If there's a voice that pops up and says, I'm not ready for this, I'm telling you, an 18-year-old was in the room. You know what I mean? That's just an illusion that you create for yourself.
You're never too young or too old, or it's never too late or too early.
No, I like to say that if the Dalai Lama was in front of me, I would say, hey, Dalai Lama, you should go to this training. Like, I don't care where you're at in your life. Like, this is going to be the most valuable experience you've ever had.
I met so many lifelong friends during my training from every walk of life. Like, there's a mom who has 3 kids, there's a bodybuilder, there's a dad going through a divorce, like every walk of life. And like being able to connect with these people while you're at a training that are so different from you, but not at the same time. It's like, you're still the same, and getting to see that reflected in your face is incredible. So yeah, guys, it was truly transformational. Zack and I get the privilege of being in the next couple of Austin trainings, hopefully, cross my fingers, for sure this next training. So tell us when the training is, where it is, and how people can, get connected with you on that. He was like, he gonna sneeze.
Yeah, I had something stuck in the back of my throat. I was trying to swallow it down. It wouldn't go away. So the next training is February 10th to the 12th in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
We currently, we invite 24 people in. We currently have 18 people in at the time of this recording. And I want to offer something to your listeners, and this will be a time-limited type of thing, where I'm going to be transparent with you guys. As of now, the experience is a $2,500 investment. Now, that's an all-inclusive investment, meaning it covers your 3-night stay at the event center, it covers your food, and it covers your training.
Wow.
For the listeners of this show, I want to offer a scholarship rate of only $1,000. So $1,000 can bring you into this training. And again, this is going to come out, in a week. So there'll be a call link down below where you can schedule a call, and I'll just say, hey, you already know what the rate is. You've heard me talk about the experience. If your intuition is saying, and you're in a financial situation where you can afford this, schedule a call, and the first however many people schedule a call and get in can fill the rest of the training.
Wow.
But again, it's going to be up to you to choose in.
Wow. Thank you for that. Wow, this has been great, Zack. My baby. So we like to ask all of our guests before we say goodbye, when was the moment you knew how powerful you truly were?
the moment that I had become aware of all the suffering I had created in my life and realized that I was that powerful that I could create that much suffering and pain.
Wow.
And I was also that powerful to create this much joy and fulfillment and happiness in my life.
Mic drop. Boom. Well, thank you so much for coming on, baby.
It was my honor, baby.
It was so fun. I hope to have you on again. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Julia's Instagram page sometimes and her TikTok page whenever she wants to tag me.
Maybe. No. I have this routine, and I work so fast, and sometimes I forget to tag him, and it hurts his feelers.
But yeah, all my social media outlets are at Zack Blakeney. Nobody has my name. You can check out, our website, www.journeytonobody.com.
Okay.
And then for anybody that's interested in self-mastery or self-awareness coaching, it's www.unleashyourg.com/start.
You're so cute.
And I assume these links will be in the show notes.
Yes, all these links will be in the show notes, guys. Please get connected with Zack. And if your intuition right now is saying, to this training, please, if you do anything for Juliarene, please, just listen to it. Just listen to it. Well, thank you all so much. As always, I love you, and you are more powerful than you think. Bye.